how important is humor, I guess, in mating dynamics? What does it signal? What does it mean? And how does it differ between each gender?
Right. Well, that's you start with a big question. Well, first of all, humor is very important in all kind of social interaction, not just in mating, and it's something that we experience every day. We enjoy every day. People like to tell joke. People like to laugh a lot. In the mating context, it has very maybe unique experience. But let's maybe back down for a second to give some background. So from an evolutionary perspective, men and women have different strategies, preferences when they're choosing a mate. And a lot of it stems from reproduction cost, because women are the ones that are getting pregnant, carrying the baby, and in most societies, even today, they are the main caregivers in the first few years of the when the baby is born. In ancestral times, they have to breastfeed for 3-4 years. So that's a lot of investment. And during that time, they cannot have other babies. And they're also limited in the number of babies they can have in the lifetime, because they also undertake menopause. That doesn't happen the same way for men. So they have, compared to men, very limited reproduction. So they have to be very careful who they choose as a mate, right? Now, there's a lot of traits that they want in a potential mate. There's a lot of physical traits. One obvious one is athletic ability, right? You want a strong man. Again, in hunter-gatherer society, that means you are a good hunter who can build nice house to you and the children you have together. So physical ability is one thing. Status in general, being someone high rank in the society, whatever it means in different societies. In our society, usually it translates into having a lot of money, but it doesn't have to be that way. But high status individuals have more resources, more access to resources, so they can, again, supply more shelter, food to you and your kids. Now, so this is like basic evolutionary logic. On the other hand, a man, which men can reproduce for much longer span. They can have many women pregnant at the same time. So the total investment is much less than women. So obviously, if man doesn't stick around the woman, there is a lower chance, again, under ancestral time, that the child might survive. Today, obviously, in modern environment, most children survive with modern medicine and support. But under ancestral times, they're up to like 40-50% chance the child will not survive. So obviously, pair bonding has its benefit. But even if there is lower chance, still, few minutes of investment of having sex, that's and potentially having a baby that you don't have to actually support, that's a huge evolutionary benefit. So women, again, have to be choosier and more careful who they choose as a mate. Now, in addition to physical traits, both men and women look for other traits, more cognitive traits. And because women are choosier, they pay more attention to this trait. So traits like artistic ability, creativity, and sense of humor all correlate really well with intelligence, which is another desired trait that both sexes want. Obviously, you want a partner with a high intelligence because it gives you a lot of benefit. It's very important. So in that sense, humor is kind of a proxy for having high intelligence. Now, because again, the asymmetry in parental investment, women pay more attention to someone with a great sense of humor. So we find one of the most interesting things when we look at mate preferences in relation to humor. So first of all, women value humor much more than men. It's usually in most surveys, if you look cross-cultural surveys, you find that humor is on the top, maybe 1 or 2 traits that women want in a partner. You find it on dating sites, etc., that women want someone with a sense of humor. For men, it's much less. Now, women want a man that will have high humor ability, while men want someone that will laugh at the humor. So even so, both may say that they want a sense of humor, so there's the difference in what they mean by sense of humor. So women want a good cue of high intelligence, while men, if a woman laughs at their joke, that's a really good signal that the woman is interested in them, is attractive to them. So there is the potential here for mating. So this is in a nutshell the difference in human preferences.
Okay. So essentially, men need to be better at making jokes, and women, well, men are more attracted to the fact that women are finding them humorous, and men need to be humorous in themselves. Yeah. I also when I was reading a bit, I mean, there wasn't much in the book essentially about humor, which is why I was so intrigued in this. But it does it not also signal health, like, fitness? I think it was in the fitness hypothesis that.
Right. Well, so humor is what we call a mental fitness indicator. So having high intelligence, it's often correlated with a low mutation load, which is also relates to health. Also, the connection between humor and health is more complex, okay? Because I wrote also an article about a couple of articles that it's not necessarily that the funny people are healthier, but it does signal like warmth, fun to be around. So more maybe related to, I would say, mental health and physical health. So it's actually, you want someone to have fun with, to be, funny person around. But we don't really actually appreciate how much humor and laughter is important until we meet a person that doesn't laugh. I don't know, we had this experience, most people do, that there is some odd person that never laughs and you always feel awkward about that. It's kind of weird, right? So we want people that will laugh around, that will be able to share laughter. That's also something that's important to us as humans.
Okay, very interesting. Well, do you think it can be faked then to an extent? Because I don't know, when you're looking at when I thought about ancestral societies, like back how I guess mating used to happen, you had so if I use like the term mate poaching, for example, where you had lower value men trying to take women from the higher value men. I wonder if there was some faking of humor going on then as well, in order to feign intelligence in that way.
Right. Well, what's good about mental fitness indicator like creativity, intelligence, and humor they are hard to fake indicators. So obviously, maybe you can train a little bit. There are many books that will promise you to have great sense of humor. There are lots of comedy secrets. Comedians write such books, how to improve, and to some extent there are certain techniques that you can learn, how to tell a joke, how to tell a story, but you need a natural talent, right? So most of this trait, like most psychologists, traits are heritable. So it's hard to fake, but you point out to something really interesting, that it's true. Men compete with each other who is the funnier, and that's actually what gives them some advantage on women's humor. So I did a meta-analysis a few years ago that compared sense of humor, like humor ability, who is funnier, men or women. So we have this stereotype that women are not funny and men are funnier. And it is a stereotype, and actually both men and women believe in these stereotypes. I wanted to see if this is true. Now, I would say that everything that we check is, of course, on average. Obviously, there are very funny women. It's not that women are not funny at all. But we did find, when I tracked back all the studies that reported like a true humor ability, so on average, we found like not very big, moderate amount of difference, but still significant, that men were on average had better sense of humor. And evolutionary, it makes sense, because what we call the intra sexual competition or selection is much stronger within men because they are the one that trying to compete and impress women. And humor is one part of it. So men are trying to be funnier, compete with each other. Many of them, by the way, fail, like you say, like low quality individual or people with low quality humor. And you can see it on dating websites. So a lot of guys try to be funny and they just joke it or wear. Right.
Yeah.
And you can, if you ask your female friends, you'll see probably stories from dating that, the man was upward trying to be funny, doesn't work. But at least that means that they sort of indirectly acknowledge that humor is important in dating. So men know that. They try to be funny and, the good ones succeed. But not everyone. So we need natural variability on this trait.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point about, first of all, the gender differences in the humor. Like, I'm sure there are, on average, men are probably funnier than women, and I'm sure there are funnier women. But I think a lot of people forget, especially if they haven't read into evolutionary stuff about this, that it's literally a competitive trait in men to be funnier because it helps them in gathering mates.
Right. It's not only gathering mates, it's also part of intrasexual selection that when they use like disparaging humor to actually belittle other male rivals. So it's not that, so they work, it's both directions. One way is to try to create better and funnier jokes to impress women, but another way is to try to use other deprecating or disparaging humor to try to, lower status of other individuals.
Yeah, you see, what that reminds me of again, so I know men tend to do that more, especially, I guess you see it a lot more in the UK, I think, versus maybe in other countries. Like, in the UK, if you introduce a friend, it's like, oh, hey, this is my friend John. He pissed his bed when he was 8 years old. Or like in America, it's more like you're saying people's accomplishments or whatever.
Right.
But my point was, women do the same thing, right? Where they try to put down other potential mating opportunities for men so that they look more attractive.
Right.
So, they're by using, dating slurs, like calling them sluts or saying that they've been around a lot.
Right.
So I guess, do they not use humor in that sense, or are they more just straightforward and harsh about it?
Well, they might use humor, not to the same extent, I think. Women tend to use more gossip, use rumors on other women, spread rumors. So as you said, like all kind of derogatory terms toward other women to enhance their status. So yeah, both men and women have take part in intrasexual competition. But again, because women are choosier, they don't need it that much. And there is a famous like cliche that if a woman want to have sex, they can find a partner. Maybe not her ideal partner, maybe not the most beautiful, attractive person, but there's always going to be a willing man to have sex with her. While men, a lot of men are cannot find anyone to have sex or partner, and we see this in the number of reported like sexual partner for men and women. For women, it's more like a bell curve, while for men, it's more like a skewed distribution where there are maybe 0 to few partners. A lot of people have them, and very few men has many partners, like 100 and more, like big celebrities, rich people, and so on.
Is this changing much now? Because there's I think it was the marriage squeeze. That was the term that was used. Essentially, because men die quicker than women, there's sort of and also on college campuses, for example, more women are going to university versus men. So the distribution of women to men, the ratio is much more towards the woman's side. So there's less mating opportunities for more women than there is for men.
Yeah, to some extent, you are right. So actually, and there are studies showing about like looking at sex ratio, where so like in cities, towns where there is more present of one sex, so they become less choosy because the competition is harder. But the thing is today that while people do meet on college, they also meet a lot on dating sites and apps. So the actual market is much larger than there is, and in that market there are more men than women. So it's women's choice to large degree in the market.
Okay. All right, I see. In terms of humor, I wonder, in a long-term relationship, would it then at some point you'd reach like diminishing returns where it's not as effective near the start of the relationship?
Right. So all humor preferences, and in general, like many preferences that evolutionary psychology talk about, they tend to be in their like the most intense form during courtship, dating, earlier stages in relationship when you have all the butterflies and stuff like that. But as the relationship turn into longer, long-term relationship, then traits tend to be more converged. So more men and women and like partner become more similar, but still in relation to humor, we still have studied a joint that even in long-term relationship, men is the one that tend to be the funnier, the one that to initiate more joke. So while it might not be as much as in the initial stage, we still find this difference in long-term relationship. And I think maybe in more successful relationship, we get this kind of tension. So maybe when they say you have to keep like courting your partner isn't long into your relationship to keep it alive. So that's maybe a good way to do that.
Yeah, I could see that. And then, so what this makes me think of is, I'll see stuff on Instagram where say a woman is mad about something in a relationship. Some guys' tendencies in that situation is to make jokes, maybe to soften down the mood so that it's not as hostile. But I get the sense that women don't really like that, especially when they're not in a great mood. So I wonder why that is. If humor is an effective, I guess, mating strategy in that sense.
Right. Well, I think what you find maybe use of humor from lower quality males. I don't know what the jokes are. Yeah, it's one of the most important thing about humor. It's not about really telling joke. If you memorize like 100 jokes and tell them in sequence, nobody will like it. No woman will like it. The humor ability is actually spontaneous humor. Is the ability to say the right thing in the right time to the right person. So you have to read the room, right? If I go to a feminist like a convention and start telling sexist joke, that would not go well. And this is similar situation. So they don't really adapt to the situation. They just try to be funny without regard to the woman interest, emotional stake, and so on. So it will just fail. And as I say, most males' attempts at humor actually are not that good. So that's what helps the good one to shine.
Ah, I see. So there's this sort of, the low quality males are so bad that when there's the high quality ones who are still good on base level, they seem even better because it's being compared to the lower ones.
Well, timing is everything. And I mean, in that sense, I would say there's not much to lose. Maybe some women do like this kind of joke. So telling jokes, an Instagram post, it doesn't really affect you that much. It doesn't have any cost for you. So it's, you can try, but usually you'll fail.
Yeah. Are there then particular humor styles, or is it just a universal thing? It's just like humor in general, or are there particular humor styles that are more effective than others?
No, well, there are different ways to classify humor. So one way we already talked about is like humor appreciation and humor production. So there are two different things. So for example, people that are really good in telling jokes are not necessarily laughing a lot, and vice versa. If you laugh a lot, if you enjoy humor, watching comedy, that doesn't make you funnier person. Now, there's also a different classification based on 4 humor style, like 2 positive and 2 negative. It's how people use humor in the daily life. So as you know, there's a cynical person that try to make fun of anything, doesn't take anything seriously, sarcasm and stuff like that. So this could be one style. There's another like style that they use what we call affiliative humor, try to, cheer up people, use humor in a benign way to lift people up, including yourself. So that's another kind of style. And there's like aggressive humor, try to make fun of others and sometimes try to make fun of yourself, like self-deprecating humor. Also to live kind of the other people's sense of humor, like being the butt of the jokes, the class clown and stuff like that. So certain people use this style more than others. So we all score, we all have a score in these different styles, and it just, different variation on how we can use humor. So it's not necessarily good and bad. Again, it all also depends on the situation, of course.
Yeah, you make a good point about the self-deprecating humor. I wonder, because if humor is supposed to be used as a sort of courtship strategy in order to attract mates, and you use the jokes to sort of lower your own mate value, it kind of contradicts each other. So I wonder how that works.
Well, that's a great question. And actually, I was wondering about that. I conducted my first study was on self-deprecating humor to try to look at this phenomena. And it all depends. So what happens is that it depends if you are of high status of low or low status. So let's take, in more extreme cases like politicians or actors that are very, have made it very favorable. You have favorable view of that. So when they tell a self-deprecating humor, it sounds more benign, like honest. They poke fun of themselves. It doesn't hurt them that much. Unless they use it too much. But on occasion when they use it, so it actually makes them look more charming. Maybe it makes you feel closer to them. On the other hand, when you have someone that is low status and they tell a joke, then it's a kind of look more pathetic or self-serving. So it doesn't work the same way. And actually, yes, you devalue. The mating actually is devalued because that doesn't help them that much. So it's important, again, in the context and to know who you are, and it's risky. Humor in general is risky. So sometimes it works, not all the time. So the people that can adjust to when and what joke to tell, they are the ones that are more successful.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'd assume even the best sort of people, the best people to tell jokes, they will have jokes that don't work some of the time. But it's then again, you can have trust in those people that when they make a bad joke, they can then make another joke to then pull themselves out of a bad joke, which is
right. So that's you see with great comedian, right? Every comedian at some point fail or jokes, fall flat, but they know how to get out of it. While some comedians, especially maybe amateur or in early careers, I've seen some that can be very cringy, like when they tell bad joke after another and they never succeed. So that's a problem.
And I wonder why do people find particular people who even say bad jokes funny? Because what this reminded me of is, I remember, I'm not comparing comedians I've seen in Britain's Got Talent, and I've seen really good comedians who've told amazing jokes with amazing stories, but I've also seen really bad ones who've gotten the same reaction. And it's strange to me because they've said really bad jokes one after another, and fairly simple ones, yet people still get a similar response to those jokes versus really good ones.
Well, I guess it again depend on the mix, and if it comes after really good joke, if you already established that a comedian is great, so you give them like a longer kind of leash of telling some bad jokes. And some do it, as I say, on purpose, just to tell one bad joke after another. And at some point, you're right. Like you tell one bad after that, so that become like a gag, like that's what you do, and people kind of. It's a different view. They don't value a joke by itself, like they value as a sequence, and at some point it becomes funny. And it also, there is another thing that humor kind of often breaks the ice. And it's when you had a lot of tension on the air and you then had good jokes, that can get you a lot of laughs. So sometimes these bad jokes are just like kind of a presentation to get you to the good ones. And people kind of are primed, and then they are ready to hear a good one, and then you get more laughed on that joke than you would otherwise if it were just between other good jokes.
Yeah, so you could argue it's a it's a social lubricant in a way. So
Right.
not only does it signal intelligence, but also signals the ability to network and create create an environment in a community, which then again inevitably signals to resource acquisition in the long term.
Yeah, definitely. It's contributes to group cohesion, to cooperation, collaboration between people. We like to be around people that are funny. It's also very good to identify in group versus out group. So obviously, like British have unique sense of humor that is often not understood in other countries like Germany or the US. But even within, subgroup like your local, you have probably kind of a humor that you use among your friend, like a special like private language that only you understand, and someone coming from outside you won't understand it. There are some studies about it, that when they went to like cafeterias or cafes and listened to what people are joking about and what they laugh, so most of the things that people laugh at are not jokes. They're laughing at mundane comments, something that outside they don't understand, but they make more sense within the conversation because they have all this shared history and friendship. So it definitely get, people together more.
Mm. Okay. I was wondering, so as an ovulation, I mean, as a menstrual cycle goes by, and women go through the different periods, their mating preferences change during these periods. Where does humor slot into that? Does the preference for humor go away at certain points in the cycle, or does it become more pronounced?
We tried to conduct one study about that many years ago, but it didn't work out. So we actually found that the mating preferences, humor preferences did not change as part of the cycle. But I think, yes, there is no other studies about it. And I think it's worth doing because you might think, that during peak fertility, women might have more, might be more open to humor or at least certain types of joke, but it's really unknown because, as you probably read in the book and other studies, there are lots of studies about a menstrual cycle shift in preferences and taste and things like that. So, but nobody really tested on humor yet.
But back to the self-deprecating stuff that we talked about earlier. Is it more attractive for one sex to do that than the other? Because I don't think there's been I don't think I've ever seen maybe a woman make a self-deprecating joke and get the same response that a man does.
Right. So in the study that we conducted, actually, women had the same benefits. So they were considered high status women were also considered even more attractive after they used self-deprecating humor. However, just as with humor ability, even if I said men are slightly better than women on humor ability, the difference is not that big, and obviously there are a lot of women that are funny, but the motivation is different. Because women are choosier, they're not as much as motivated to make others laugh because it doesn't do much to attract men. Like if the woman is, hot, attractive, that number one, maybe trait that where men want. And we did find, actually, we did look at how humor ability relates to mating success. So people that had higher humor ability, that were funnier, reported having started to have sex in earlier age, having more sexual partners, more short-term one-night stand. And that was true for both men and women, actually, not just men. But as I said, again, it's funnier women, they don't need humor as a tool to attract men. They have other means, and that's why men are the one that really reaping the benefits because they are judged more by the sense of humor.
I mean, you could also say, I guess, since men appreciate the idea of a woman laughing at their jokes, a woman who is funnier and is able to tell funny jokes will have more appreciation for jokes.
That's right. That's a really good point. So it's actually the same cognitive processes that make you funnier are also used to assess humor, right? If you didn't know to tell jokes yourself, to be funny yourself, how would you assess humor? It would be very high. If the gap between men and women's humor ability was too high, women will just not be able to judge a joke. So that's why it actually makes sense that while men's ability are slightly higher, the gap is not that much, and women have to be funny themselves because, yeah, they're both related to each other.
Mm. And also, I was wondering, since humor is such a high risk, high reward social activity, how does that compare to, say, other intelligent signals such as maybe music and art?
Well, I think they're all good signals of intelligence. However, you don't maybe have that many opportunity to show your art compared to humor, because humor is used every day. Everyone experiences it, and it's relatively cheap. You just have to talk, so you don't have to paint anything. You don't have to get a guitar or drum. So I think it's more widely used. But you're right. A lot, pop star, rock stars are very attractive to women. Artists have higher status, they are considered more attractive. It's just that you need much more initial investment to get there than to use humor. Humor is much cheaper way, to get attraction.
Yeah. So on your studies on magicians and comedians, how much of it was just pure talent from the magicians and comedians themselves, or was it more like an obsessive practice, or maybe they displayed signs from when they were younger that they tend to be funnier?
Right. So I didn't study magician in earlier years. I studied them as adult. I had a recent study about it. But with comedian, I did look at their early experiences. And what we found out that most comedians, professional comedians, tended to tell jokes more as kids. Also, there was a tendency to be the butt of the jokes or the class clown. And, there is this conception that comedians are stand-up comedian have like issues with the parents, or they were sad clown and stuff like that. But none of that is true. And it actually has more to do with kind of gaining status among peers. So because humor is social, it developed in response to other social interaction, and usually during adolescence. And the thing is also, many stand-up comedians are not very attractive. So it's kind of an alternative strategy for them to gain high status. And comedians do have, I think, quite high status in our society. So if you're not very attractive, if you're not maybe very rich, being the funny guy is actually make you more attractive, higher status. And as Mel Brooks said, nobody beats the guy that make you laugh. So that's another reason why you should be funny if you can.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you do make a good point there about how people think that those people who are funny have, bad parents and etc. And I find it strange that's the case, because there's always the cliche that the class clown goes home and is really depressed and anxious. So then that's why it gets me wondering: are there personality costs to being a funny person, or is it's just a bonus?
Well, I guess it depends. There are a lot of different kind of comedians, but yeah. Well, first of all, we did test the relationship with the parents, and we didn't find that comedians are any different than the other population in how they grew up and how they responded to the parent, and they were more depressed than usual. If you are, there are studies that showing that is quite interesting that the famous comedians and comedy writers actually die at younger age than the average population. But this probably doesn't have to do with humor per se. It has to do with their lifestyle. So we have a famous example with, so it's not just comedian, entertainer in general. They use more drugs, they eat unhealthy, they don't take care of themselves. And especially comedians, they tend to travel a lot. So a professional stand-up comedian usually doesn't perform in the same place every week. Like in the US especially, they go from city to city, very different. if you really want to succeed, because you want to test your comedy on different crowd. But in the UK too, you have different like comedy festival. You have obviously the Edinburgh, Leicester is very famous. But even here in our area, we have two comedy festival. We have Aberystwyth Comedy Festival every year. We have Mahindley Comedy Festival that is like half an hour from here. So comedians that I know here, they just go every week or few weeks to different comedy festival, perform their act. So it's not very good. It's not very healthy lifestyle to do so. And it's especially, by the way, hard on women, which might explain why we have more male stand-up comedians than women. So the lifestyle of stand-up comedians seem to cater more to male psychology, traveling a lot, working alone. So comedy in general is very solitary, actually, profession. I mean, we tend to see them or think about it only performing in front of crowd, but this is just the end result of all the work they put. That usually they have to practice hours in front of the mirror, or they have to write the material, and all of this is done by themselves. So without the help of other, because the big no, you don't steal jokes from anyone, right? So it's men tend to like this kind of work more than women. They tend to be slightly more competitive. They tend to like to work alone more. They don't care much of, traveling alone. Also, if you have a family, it's much more common even today. So there are some sexism to it, but it's also evolutionary based because women are the main caregivers. So it's harder to women with, newborn baby to go on the road and travel. While for men, it's much easier, to leave the baby with his wife and go travel and then come back after a few days. So all these factors actually makes male comedians maybe more successful than women. But again, if you live in a big city like London, for example, New York or LA, you have many opportunities to perform in different clubs in that city, at least for a while. But at some point, you do have to go travel.
Yeah. I can. That's an interesting point you made. The fact that the lifestyle of a comedian is more catered towards men's psychology. Yeah. I want to go a little back in the conversation about how we talked about humor in long-term relationships. I wonder, is there any sort of humor like that is harmful in long-term relationships, or is all humor just positive in that way?
Well, I think if you are the cynic type, sarcasm, and again, aggressive type of humor, other deprecating, if you make fun of your partner all the time, that wouldn't be really very beneficial for your relationship. So usually, I mean, it's also depend on the partner. So depend what kind of style they like. So usually we tend to find that men and women that get along together, they tend to like similar kind of humor. So if you are liking dark humor or, disaster humor, some aggressive humor, you tend to find partners that like that. I mean, not always, of course, but I mean, you also have a choice. You might like this kind of humor. You don't have to use or, watch movies that include this kind of jokes in the present. But yes, as a humor style tend to be compatible for the most part.
Yeah, I was wondering. So if you use humor that is deprecating your partner, so I connect this with with verbal abuse. So if one of the partners who believes that they're lower mate value than the other partner, they will indulge in verbal abuse in the relationship in order to ensure that the other partner believes that they have a lower mate value so that they stay in the relationship. Have you found that people use the deprecating jokes as a way to do that?
No, I didn't find it. I don't think there is research on this topic. So there are very few research actually looking at humor in relationships. So a lot of the research, especially from an evolutionary point of view, focus on the dating, mating aspect or mate preferences. But that's a good point. That I think that a lot of time, what one partner might consider humor, the other partner just find offensive. And that's also the issue if you kind to deprecate or dismiss your partner, make fun of them, they don't see it as funny or as humor in general, and that can be the problem there, right? So in order to appreciate humor, you first have to agree what's humor in general, and then, making comments against your partner. You can sometimes try to disguise like very harsh comments through humor, which could work to some degree, but if you're using it against your partner, that's something is not right in that relationship.
Okay. Interesting. So it's essentially just I guess good humor and a good humor compatibility between the two partners allows for long-term stability in a relationship.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, how has humor evolved? Since like I know dark humor. There was a big burst of dark humor during the world wars where people were using it as a way to cope. And maybe how like cross-culturally, how does humor relate to each other?
Well, when you say evolve, that can mean different things. I mean, from evolutionary perspective, we are actually not the only species that laugh. There's evidence that other primates mainly also laugh and possibly use humor. There's even evidence that even rats might be enjoying laughter with you. If you search, your listener go to YouTube and search like rat tickling, you will find videos showing how you can tickle like rats, and they laugh. They make sound that we cannot hear as human, but we can amplify it. It's outside the range, and they seem to want someone to tickle them. So they look the hand that tickles them. So there is a lot of evidence. So laughter, at least, and smile is not unique to women, but obviously there are a lot of cross-cultural and cultural differences. And by the way, humor as a word itself also evolved over time. It wasn't, now we use it for a lot of many things. It's very broad term, but in the past it was actually, there was the four humors. That was the word humors come from, like blood, phlegm, bile, and stuff like that. And each one represented like a personality trait. A combination of them, of the humors, were personality trait. And humor for many, many years, so medieval years and up until maybe 200-300 years ago, it was considered something that you do to make fun of other people, usually actually the weaker people in the society, deformed people, disabled people, and so on. So it was a negative term. Only about 100 years ago, humor was starting the shift. The word humor, it's not necessarily the phenomena, shift into a more positive association, and the word humorist becomes someone that made you laugh. And Mark Twain is considered to be the first humorist. So that's just tell you how recent it is. But yeah, we use a lot of dark humor during dark time, like world wars or in the pandemic. A lot of people had a lot of jokes during the pandemic, and it's a good defense mechanism, right? So patients of cancer use humor to deal with the cancer. In the Holocaust, there's a lot of evidence that people in the most dire condition still use humor. They couldn't change the reality, the physical reality around them, but they could change the internal reality. So at least they had some control about the thought, and humor was one way to do it. So obviously humor can serve many different like social function, good and in bad situations.
I guess my question for using humor as a way to cope with things, it's I wonder at what point does that become destructive? Because when you look in the modern world, people will use, instead of maybe if they don't have humor to cope with other people around them, they'll use maybe video games or eating junk food, porn, as a way to cope with the reality around them so that they can shift their attention away from what's actually going on to something else. I wonder how much humor is a similar sort of coping mechanism to that, and whether it can become destructive in the long term.
Well, it's obviously it's not like video game because you cannot tell jokes so much and you cannot laugh. So I mean, people that constantly laugh, there is some neurological disorder that people cannot stop laughing, and that's terrible. That has like they have brain damage and their life are miserable. So obviously it's not something good. But there are, as I said, maybe some people that are kind of telling joke all the time, try to be funny all the time, and usually they are the most irritating people in the room because you don't like that much, right? It's they try to make fun of everything, and it's too much. So that's why guys, you need to read the room. You need to see what's going on, how people react. These are the people that don't respond to other people's reaction to the humor. They just kind of try to tell jokes, so they don't have maybe in a sense a lot of emotional intelligence or conscientiousness about the situation. So while it could be maybe detrimental to some degree, they won't be viewed favorably, but I don't think it's like damaging in the sense of maybe being addicted to other stuff like video games. Even video games, it's not like addiction doesn't have very severe health consequences and even have some benefits. So in terms of health, I don't think it could be really bad unless you have, as I said, this neurological disorder that you cannot stop laughing.
About humor in the maintenance of relationships. So if it's used as a way to keep stability in a relationship, I wonder after, I think it's when the woman gets older, as their reproductive value decreases, I'm guessing men have a less inclination to mate God, right? So is there connection between women's age and the amount of humor that's used in a relationship?
Well, that's a good question. I don't have the answer because we don't really have the studies like longitudinal studies or studies of elderly population to look exactly at the role of humor in that relationship. I have one student that investigating the use of humor among the older population, and in general, the use of humor actually declined with age, but not by choice. A lot of older people do want to use humor, but they have fewer opportunities, right? A lot of them are not like technological savvy. They're not on social media, which a lot of humor is there right now. They have fewer social interaction. Maybe they have the spouse, but sometimes, the spouse might die. And, humor with your kids, it's not the same. So they actually do want to have more humor. I don't know, older couples, how much exactly the degree of humor they use. I think for healthy relationship, they do tend to still keep using humor, obviously not necessarily for courtship, but to maintaining the relationship, and this successful relationship will have good humor in them for many years.
Okay, that's very interesting. At this point in the video, I doubt how many people listen, so we can just talk about whatever. But I wanna run through this with you because it's not very humor related, but I just wanted to see what your take on it was. So I was speaking to a couple of friends of mine about she asked me to explain what was my reasoning for why. So she knows, like, it was a weird twist where, like, it was her mom's friends, sister's friends, family friends person. There was a guy who stabbed his girlfriend 97 times, and she was like, "Oh, what's your reasoning? What's the evolutionary reasoning for that?" And my first thought was, "Oh, sexual jealousy. That's probably like increased aggression. That's probably why I went by." But then she said that across his life, his mom had suspicions that he would be doing something like that. There were signs across his entire life that showed that. And so then my question here is, are people born with like such a neurological disorder where they just want to murder people? Or is that something that's whether nature or nurture?
Some of it, yes. So we have psychopaths, and I don't know if you're familiar like with the dark triad. So people like they have like dark personality trait like psychotism, Machiavellian intelligence, So people that try to manipulate others. So there are certain people that are born more evil than others. There are very few percentage of them. And by the way, psychopaths not necessarily a kind of do something. So a lot of them have self-control, but there are some people that do have some maybe different wiring that they cause them to murder. By the way, by far, men commit the most hideous crimes than women. It's not even close. And the percentage of murderers is like, I don't know, 95, 99% of men, and then very few women. And a lot of, like you said, might relate to sexual conflict, jealousy, and things like that. I mean, that doesn't mean that everything can be explained using this relationship, but to a large degree, we do have like context does matter when they murder, and if you add to that, so in that sense, many people, I think most people actually might have the potential to hurt, even kill someone else in the right situation, like self-defense, for example. If someone comes to kill you, you probably will, be willing to kill them. It just never, comes up in modern society. But some people are more, have tendency to be more psychopaths and use driven by dark personality trait. And that's a trait that haven't been extinct evolutionary, maybe because it has some benefits when it doesn't manifest itself in this like murderous kind of view. So a lot of like CEOs, for example, score high on psychotic traits. They tend to, one of the things is that they don't connect really well to other people. They don't they don't maybe read emotions very well, or they don't care about the emotions of others, which might be really good at business, to be, step on someone to get, higher in the hierarchy. And in extreme cases, that could result in some crime. But in many cases, it doesn't, and it can maybe drive innovation. That's why the trait is not extinct. Also, it's not very common.
So it could probably not be extinct because it depends on the way the person directs that sort of energy.
Right. Yes. So it's so a lot of traits might have positive and negative possible effect, and it depends on how you grew up, what the situations or what the context that you are involved in. Like mental illnesses too, like autism has strong genetic basis, and we know, for example, engineer people that score high, have high intelligence, tend to have more autistic kids than people that are not highly intelligent. So again, so the genes that can promote and give you high intelligence, when something goes wrong, can also result in some mental illnesses.
Oh, that's interesting. So if you tend to score highly, I guess, in the intelligence personality trait, you are more likely than someone who isn't as intelligent to have autistic kids?
Yeah, to some extent, yeah. If you go to, read Baron Cohen books about the extreme male hypothesis, that's what he promotes. He talks about these differences, and it's more common in men than in women.
To be autistic?
Yes.
Oh, wow. What's the particular reason for that? Is it because, I wonder, is it like a difference in the wiring of the brain or male psychology? What is it that causes men to more likely be autistic than women?
Well, it's not easy to answer. It might be that men are more genetic predisposed to that, but it's possible that men are more diagnosed with autistic because because autistic has many traits, and some of them are maybe more obvious than other, like social awkwardness, not connecting, not showing emotion, and this is a trait that are easily to pick on early on and to be diagnosed, while kind of the emotional states, internal states are harder to measure, and that women, girls might have more of that. So that's why they are more less diagnostic of women with autism. But it is more men that are diagnosed with autism, and it's a combination between genetic and environment. But yeah, it's a lot unknown on this topic. I'm not an expert on that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one to delve into. But I'm heading a little back into humor. I want to connect it to at least where the future is headed with AI, at least.
Right.
Do you reckon AI would ever be able to produce this human level of humor in social contexts, or is there like particular human attributes that make it unique to us?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. Actually, there are lots of attempts to do that. So you can actually ask ChatGPT or others to tell you a joke, and they will tell you a joke, and some of them are good. But what studies have shown that the good jokes that all the large language models that are very popular now are using, usually they copy jokes from the web. So it's not really real creativity, but they use jokes or very similar jokes that already exist. And this is actually one of the most difficult challenges, I think, for artificial intelligence, because that will show you full creativity. And as I said, humor ability is a cognitive trait, but it also relates to a lot of social, environmental cues and context that AI, at least right now, are not part of it, unless maybe we give them this kind of context, or we'll kind of, implement AI, robots in our environment, and then see how they react. I think that true, like, highest level of humor will still, at least for a while, be created by human, not AI.
Well, then on the point, I know you're not exactly the doing like you're not a professor in AI, but I wonder if is it because it's not able to generate unique ideas, or is it just because does it only know what it knows, right? ChatGPT or like or other language models, or is it able to generate unique ideas? Because then if it's able to generate unique ideas, I wonder if it's able to then generate jokes that haven't been said before, which is, I guess, a part of a good joke. It has some
Right. So AI is usually, they can either like kind of copy jokes that already exist, or given like they can generate some joke that have like pattern, like how is A like B, something like that, like puns, simple jokes. They can do to some extent and create very good jokes, but again, they have a lot of hallucinations. So there are programs that ask AI to create jokes, that they can produce easily like 1,000 jokes, that maybe 10 of them will be funny. But you see, we still need the human interaction. We need the human to evaluate them. And the jokes they produce are maybe funny in, for 5, 6 years old. To tell a true joke, with the beginning, middle, and end, like a real story that is completely creative and unique, it's really hard. And I don't think we are at that level, but we might get there. With all the advances now, who knows what will happen in a few years.
Yeah, I guess so. We talked a lot about the benefits of telling jokes and the sort of attributes that come with people who tell jokes. What are the benefits of laughter then? Of actually reacting to jokes, being around people who make you laugh. Is there health benefits to that, or cognitive benefits?
Well, it can burn like 10 calories, so it's not a really good exercise. Okay, that some people sing, some people, you have all this laughter yoga that gets you to laugh a lot. And I don't know if you're familiar with laughter yoga.
I've not heard of it. This laughter yoga. So they're literally there in a room and they're all just laughing.
Yeah, so this is very common. It started in India. Now it's popular everywhere. So you get group of people for half an hour, and you just ask them just to laugh for no apparent reason, not in response to a joke. And people try to laugh to exert energy. And the idea is that it can release a lot of I don't know, psychological tension and also a form of exercise. But unfortunately, laughter per se as a physical activity is not very good. It's very good for some, releasing maybe tension. As I said, it's a good like a social lubricant. And sometimes when there are tension between individuals, laughter is a good signal that, I don't take you too seriously, that everything is okay between us, that we're friends, and something like that. So it's a very good cue, and it's energetically, it obviously it has some physiological aspect of it. It release of endorphins and some others hormone. So it makes you feel good, but long-term health effects are quite small from the studies we have.
Okay. Well, you know what? Before we end this, I will ask you a very well, it's like a pick or choose question. So if you could only keep one out of the two, humor or love, which would be more important, I guess, for human survival?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think love actually will be more important. Yeah, if we can have more love in the world, so we might not need humor.
I guess so. Yeah, that's an interesting take, and I guess it is just more in terms of the future prospects of offspring. It would make sense to have more love and kindness. And you know what? I want to present this take to you as well. Um, my take was so in a relationship where men men tend to be more inclined to wanting to have sex with their partner, and women are more inclined to wanting to have love and commitment and attention from their partner. And I think what the hypothesis I came up about this was so there's this thing called type A and type B people. This is the context I'm going to give, and there's type A and type B problems for them. So type A person is someone who's able to work really hard. He's resilient, and but the problem that he comes with, which is the type A problem, is that he's unable to take breaks. He doesn't know how to relax. Whereas the type B person is a lazy person, sits indoors, plays video games, and he knows how to relax, but the problem that comes with him is that he doesn't know how to work hard, and he doesn't know how to really get at something. When you hear people talk about the type A problem, like, oh, I really don't know how to take a rest, I really don't know how to relax and spend some time with myself, people kind of look at that as like a champagne problem. Like, oh, what do you mean? Like, you're so successful externally. Well, that sounds like such a childish thing to say, that you need more rest. Whereas the other person who's lazy and doesn't know how to work, when they say, I wish I could work harder, I wish I could do more, that seems like so much more noble of a reason to have a problem. So my take on this about why I said that was, if you take in terms of the mating dynamics and relationships, where if a woman was to come out to say, I wish my husband gave me more love and commitment in a relationship, that problem seems so much more noble than a man coming out saying, I wish I had more sex from my wife, even though they're on the same level in terms of psychology for each gender, because men are more inclined to relate commitment and stability of relationship to sex, and women are more likely to relate commitment and stability in a relationship through love and attention. It just seems so much more noble to bring out the issue that I wish I had more love and attention, than to bring out the issue I wish I had more intimacy and sex from my partner. So which may be a reason why men talk about it less, and there may be this sort of withholding and constraining of the way that people really feel about the relationship.
Well, I mean, men in general tend to first overestimate the women's interest in sex with them. But you're right, they try to, because women are more inclined to have long-term relationship, love, commitment, so men often can try to disguise it. They say, oh no, I'm not interested in, a short-term relationship, one night stand. I really want long-term relationship, while their main goal is to have sex, and often they disappear after that. So it's kind of the make it game, which, and then if it happens to a woman once, then of course it reinforces her view to be more choosy and, decline sex for longer time. So yeah, there's also, because of, evolutionary didn't shape us the same, both sexes, there is this tension that, each one has, presences, but they're not always necessarily revealed. So we have all this mating game, all these rituals, trying to soften things, try sometimes often to deceive each other or be ambiguous about things. And often people read what they want to read depending how much maybe they like the partner. So if a woman really likes a guy she's dating, maybe she will be more inclined to believe they want long-term relationship when he doesn't. So everyone learns from their experience, or they don't, some don't.
Yeah, I guess so. Dr. Gil Greengross, thank you for being on the show. This has been a great conversation. I very much enjoyed this. I've learned a lot more than I've already read, so I've really enjoyed it.
Well, thanks for inviting me. That was great.
No worries. Thank you for being on. I will hopefully maybe see you soon in some future episodes.
Yeah, can you send me the link once it's published?
Oh yeah, 100%. Where should people go if they want to see your work and your publications?
Well, I have in my email my website, a university website. They can see more, or they can, just reach out to me. They can email me if they want to have any.
All right.
About
That's great.